We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 31b. The Gemara is bringing a Mishnah from later on to show that Beis Shammai hold even hektish betos, even if you have hektish that actually was in error, it would be hektish. Let's say you have a situation of people walking on the road, v'yechad ba kenegdan, and there's someone coming opposite them. V'yamar echad hareini nazir shezeh ploni, and then one of the people says, I'm a nazir if this is so and so. V'yechad amar, another one says, hareini nazir she'ein zeh ploni, I'm a nazir if that's not so and so. Hareini nazir she'echad mikem nazir, somebody else says, I'm a nazir if one of you is a nazir. She'ein echad mikem nazir, another person says, I'm a nazir if not one of you is a nazir. She'shneichem nazirim, another one says, I'm a nazir if both of you are nazirim. She'kulchem nazirim, another one says, I'm a nazir if all of you are going to be nazirim. So in that situation, Beis Shammai Omer and Beis Shammai say, kulam nazirim, all of them are going to be nazirs. And the Rosh explains, Beis Shammai Omer kulam nazirim, Beis Shammai say they're all nazirim. Kol havav she'tfisu, all six of them who have associated their naziros with these ideas, kulam nazirim, they're all going to be nazirs. V'afagav de nazir to'asu. Now, even though clearly there was an error over here, sheshnayim harishonim achishim zeh, because for example, the two first people, they contradict one another. She'im ha'echad nazir ein ha'beis nazir. If the first one's a nazir, the second one is not. V'divrei hey uvav vaday lesnu. And also the words of the fifth and sixth person, those are also, they're nothing. Afilu achi, nevertheless, kamar dekulam nazirim. Beis Shammai say they are all nazirim. V'hu adin hektish betos, and the same would be true. Let's say you have a situation of hektish that's in error. That's exactly what Beis Shammai seems to be saying over here, that even though it was an error, they are going to be nazirim. And that's what the Gemara says, V'hacha, but over here, hektish betos, so this is a case of hektish and error, v'katani kulam nazirim, and it says over here that they're all nazirim, so you see Beis Shammai do say that hektish betos is hektish. And so the Gemara says, Amri, they answer, Savri Beis Shammai hektish betos have a hektish. Really, it is true. Beis Shammai most certainly hold hektish betos as hektish, but hachalo, but all we're saying is that over here in this Mishnah, in our Mishnah, that's not what's going on in our Mishnah. In other words, in our Mishnah, what's going on is the person said something, and there was an interpretation of those words, and now we're saying, no, that's not really the correct interpretation. The proper interpretation is as follows, and that's why Beis Shammai say that it is hektish. It's not a case of hektish betos in our Mishnah, even though in general Beis Shammai do hold that hektish betos is hektish. And the Gemara continues, Abaye Amar, Abaye says, Lo kasal kadaytach tekam b'tzafra. The way you understand the Mishnah is not the case. Do not think that the case in the Mishnah is the person is getting up in the morning and talking about in the future which bull is going to come out of the house first. And rather the case of the Mishnah is as follows. Tekam b'tiara, it's already later in the day. V'yamar, and the person says, Shor shachar sheyetzi mi beisei rishon, the black bull that left my house first, meaning in the past tense. The case over there is not where the person is talking about what's going to be in the future. He's saying the black shore that left my house first, lahave hektish, that should be hektish. V'yamru le, and they say to him, lavan nafak, it actually wasn't a black one that left first, it was a white one. V'yamar lahon, and then he says to them, mihava yadan, if I had known to lavan nafak, that it was the white one that went out first, lo amri shachar, I wouldn't have said black, really I would have said white. That's what I was referring to. I said black because I didn't realize what had happened, and in that situation, that's when we would say that it actually is hektish according to Beis Shammai. And the Rosh explains, Amri hocha b'divrei Beis Shammai hektish betos have a hektish hasam lo. At first the Gemara said, yes, it's true. From that case of the Nazirs, we do say that Beis Shammai hold hektish betos as hektish, but here in the Mishnah, that's not the interpretation. Meaning again, me'ahid nazirim vada ikal mishma. It's certainly true from the case of the Nazirs, the Savri hachi, that they hold like that. Beis Shammai hold that hektish betos is hektish. The hasam vada nazir betos, so that's certainly a case of a Nazir that was made in error. V'kamar dekulu nazirim, they're all going to be considered nazirim. Mishum dekulu l'nazir ichavin, because they all had intention to make themselves, each one had intention to make himself a Nazir. V'efshar dechol echad hayatoeh, it could be that everyone made a mistake. V'yasavar, each one made a mistake and thought the efshar lios kedvarav, that what he was saying was accurate. V'hotzi befiv kabbalas Nazir, but the point is, each one of them, he verbally stated that they would be a Nazir. V'yazlinan basar piv, and we follow what came out of their mouth. The fact that they made a mistake in whatever condition, that's not going to be relevant. V'afagav detoh, even though there was a mistake, still it's going to be effective. Their words are effective. Midi dehave atzmura, and that's comparable to the cases of Tmura. Kesavar lomar shor shachar v'yamar lavan. Person thought that it was black, and he said white. So that in those situations, that's going to be effective. However, our Mishnah you just can't explain in that fashion. The lo dami l'tmura, because the case of our Mishnah is not similar to the case of Tmura. Like we explained earlier. Rather, what we're saying in that case, and meaning in our Mishnah, what we're saying is that we're interpreting the words, Beis Shammai's understanding, the interpretation of his words, to to be relevant to this particular situation. L'shchorim amar, he was referring to the shchorim, k'dimitaretz Rapapa, as Rapapa explained. And again, that's as we explained on the previous summah, that he's referring to the first black ox of the black oxen that come out. And then the Gemara said, the other approach, Abaye said the case in our Mishnah is he's already at the afternoon. We're talking later in the day. We're talking about in the afternoon, all of these shavarim, they already left the house. And then he says, the black one that left first from my house, it should be holy. And then they say to him, it actually was a white one that went out first. And then he says, had I known it was a white one that went out first, and I would have said the white one. In that case, we can say, even though he said the black one, but he really wasn't intending for the black one, he just meant whichever one comes out first. The only reason he said the black one was because he happened to think it was the black one based on how it sounded. He recognizes the footsteps of his animals. He thought it was the black one that came out Rishon, that came out first. That's why I said the black one. The point is, in that scenario, you can say that it's something done in error, something made hektish in error. Is hektish the alfinan mitmura, we learned from Tmura. According to this approach, you can say that this is talking where he's saying this in the morning before they come out. And he says the black one that's going to come out first. And then a white one comes out. And they tell him a white one comes out. And he says, well, had I known that it was going to be a white one that came out first, I would have said a white one. There you can't say in that case that it's going to be hektish. In that scenario, even Beis Shammai, who normally say hektish betosa is hektish, they would say that's not hektish. Because there he's certainly just saying a lie. If he's talking in the future, whichever one comes out first, why is he saying a black one? Obviously there he can't reinterpret and say that I meant to say white, I would have said white had I known. He should have said the one that comes out first if he's talking in the future. If he's saying it in past tense, you can assume that when he said black, that was just a mistake, but really we take his declaration seriously and we say that it's going to be hektish, but only in that case of the past tense would we say that it's hektish. But the Gemara continues, can you really say that our Mishnah is talking about later on in the day when they already left the house? But the words of the Mishnah are, Dino shel zav sheyala. It says the Dino shel zav that will come up in my hand. And the Gemara says, Tani sha'ala, change the words of the Mishnah to sha'ala that came up in the past tense, that came up in my hand. Chavis shal yayin tal, a similar question, it says in the Mishnah, the barrel of wine that will come up. And again, the Gemara answers Tani sha'alsa, instead it should read sha'alsa that came up in past tense, according to this approach of Abaye. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chisda says, Uchma bechivra lakif, you have a black shore among the white shavarim, so then the black one, that's considered to be inferior. Chivra bu'uchma laki, let's say you have white patches on a black shore, that also is an indication that something is wrong. And so the Gemara says, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Shachar sheyatza mi beisi rishon, the person says, the black shore that comes out of my house first, hektish, I'm going to make it hektish. Kasal kadaytzach. Now, right now the Gemara thinks, ki makdish be'ein ra makdish. When a person sanctifies something, when he donates to hektish, so he does it in a fashion that is not generous. He's going to give the item that's inferior. V'amri Beis Shammai have a hektish, and Beis Shammai is now saying in this case, let's say what ends up happening is it's a white one, that it is hektish. Why should it be hektish? He wants to give what's inferior. He doesn't want to give the better product. So the Gemara says, 1 second, v'elamai, rather, what are you going to say? How do we interpret the Mishnah? Be'ein yafim makdish, it sounds like the person is generous, that's why we say the white shore is going to be hektish. But then let's take a look at the next case of the Mishnah. Dinar shel zav, it said if the person says he wants a golden dinar, sheyala biyadi rishon, which comes up in my hand first, that's going to be hektish. V'yola kasev, and then silver comes up. So Beis Shammai omrim hektish, Beis Shammai say it's hektish, even though certainly silver is inferior to gold. V'elamai, so then what are you going to say? Be'ein ra makdish, that the person is going to do it in a not generous fashion. But look at the last case of the Mishnah. Chavis shal yayin shetala biyadi rishon, barrel of wine that comes up in my hand first. V'yola shal shemen, then it turns out to be oil. Beis Shammai omrim hektish, Beis Shammai say it's hektish. V'ashemen adif miyayin, but oil is considered superior to wine. And so the Gemara says, Imishum halo kasha. If you're only asking from the last case of the Mishnah, that's not difficult, because it's possible to say, Beglila shanu, it's possible that the Mishnah was taught in Galil. The chamra adif mi mishcha, happens to be in Galil, wine is superior to oil. But the Gemara says, Reisha kasha Rav Chisda. But the Reisha, that first part of the Mishnah, is indeed a question on Rav Chisda. Because again, Rav Chisda said that it's the black ones that are inferior. And if you're going to say that the person is going to donate the one that is inferior, so how come the white one was considered hektish according to Beis Shammai? And so the Gemara says, Amar lach Rav Chisda says, Ki Amri, when did I say what I said? Betur de Karminoi. I was talking specifically about the Karminoi shore. That's a different kind of shore. It doesn't apply to all oxen. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda says, Uchma lemishchei, when you have a black shore, that's good for the hide. Sumka, a red one, lebisrei, that's good for the meat. And Chivra, a white one, leradya, that's good for plowing. And the Gemara asks, V'amar Rav Chisda, but didn't Rav Chisda say, Uchma b'chivra lakya, that the black one is inferior to the white one in all regards? How could he say over here that the black one is good for its hide? And the Gemara answers, Ki Amri, no, when did I say that? Meaning, when did Rav Chisda say that the black one was inferior? Again, specifically, Betur de Karmonoi, talking about the Shavarim of Karmonoi. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misha Nadar ben Nazir, if someone makes a vow to be a Nazir, V'nishal l'chacham, and he asks a Chacham to undo his vow, V'asaro, and he prohibits him, he doesn't undo the vow, so Mona Mishasha Nadar, so he counts the Naziris from the time of the vow. This means to say, even if he did not observe his Naziris, he was drinking wine over here, he was assuming it would be undone, still he can count from the time of the vow itself. And the Mishnah continues, Nishal l'chacham v'hitiro, let's say he asked the Chacham, and the Chacham undid the Naziris. So Haisalo behema mufreshes, if he had an animal that was separated for the purpose of bringing the karbonos at the end of the term of his nazirus, teitze v'tira be'eder, that animal is not kadosh, it can go out and graze among the flock. Amru Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. So Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, isn't this a case where you admit where it is a case of hektish that was mistaken because he undid the neder, he undid the nazirus, and here there's no kedusha. Here you see it goes out, it grazes among the flock, and yet that's a question again to you Beis Shammai, because Beis Shammai said hektish betos is considered hektish. So Amar Lehen Beis Shammai, so Beis Shammai said back to Beis Hillel, don't you admit in the following case, let's say you have somebody, generally you have a concept of Meiser Behema, the 10th animal that comes out is going to be Meiser, but what if the person makes a mistake? He calls the 9th one the 10th one, he calls the 10th one the 9th one, and he calls the 11th one the 10th one, and all of those animals, Shehu Mekudesh, they're all sanctified. And so that's a case of Hekdesh Betos where it is sanctified. So Amru Lahem Beis Hillel, so Beis Hillel respond to them regarding that, Lo Hashevet Kidsho, it's not the rod, so to speak, meaning to say the staff where he counts it out, that's not what makes the animal holy. What if he took the rod and he put it upon the 8th one? The Al Shnei Masor, he put it on the 12th one. Shema Asaklum, you think that's done it? Would that be effective? Might you say that that is effective? Of course not. Elakas of Shekidesh Asiri, rather the pasuk which says that the 10th animal that comes out is sanctified. Hu Kiddush Hatshi, it's the same pasuk. It comes from a pasuk that says that the 9th one is sanctified, and again the same thing by the 11th one. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph.